Ladies and gentlemen.
What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot, and a tradition like none other. For the third year straight, I am joined by Alex Doriot from the Talking Taker podcast, and that can only mean one thing. It's Royal Rumble season. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, buddy. Honored to be here, and we're taking a bit of a detour. We talked about some of the best things about Royal Rumble previously, and since we're talking about some of the worst things today, I thought I'd have like the worst room in my house here with this wallpaper behind me. I know people are used to seeing the dead man cave, as I call it, downstairs, but it's under construction, under some repairs right now, so having to shift around. So hope everybody can deal with this retro wallpaper behind me.
Well, there's only the one good news is with the retro wallpaper, you still have a nicer setup than me, which is just this white wall behind me. But yeah, for those who don't know, if it's your first time visiting the channel, Alex has joined me for the last 2 years going into the Royal Rumble. We did our top 10 Royal Rumble matches of all time 2 years ago. Last year, we did our top 10 non-Royal Rumble matches of all time. So some of the matches that take place before the Royal Rumble or perhaps for the main event, anything non-Royal Rumble on the Royal Rumble pay-per-view or premium live event, as it's called now. We went through those. And today, as Alex said, we're going to the complete opposite side of the spectrum as we look through the top 10 worst Royal Rumble matches of all time. And while we did not quantify this beforehand, both of us did not do any of the televised Royal Rumble matches.
Yeah, not like the stuff on Raw or SmackDown or anything like that. We stuck strictly to pay-per-view, PLE, Royal Rumble matches, and we were texting a little bit and saying, this was this was a fun idea that you proposed, but then it was a little bit harder to come up with these because, generally the Royal Rumble is kind of like pizza. It's even when it's bad, it's still fun to watch. There's usually at least some fun moments or surprises or returns or eliminations. Even I think literally in every one of these, I could pick out 2 or 3 fun moments in there. So it's tough to really whittle it down to what makes a bad or worst Royal Rumble.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there are some things that, even when I went and rewatched certain ones that I thought were for sure going to be in my, top 5, and they're not even on my list because I really thought they've gotten a bad rap over the years. And I'll get to some of those maybe right before our top pick. We'll do some close calls or some just outside of the countdowns. But yeah, I love the Royal Rumble. It's my favorite event of the year. And Alex, I guess we'll break a little news here on the Watch Along Wrestling YouTube channel. I'm sure there'll be a video out beforehand. Typically, I do its own video dedicated to this, but to break some news, both you and I will be heading to the 2025 Royal Rumble at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. How are you feeling about that?
I would say we have declared for the Royal Rumble in Indianapolis, Indiana, to use the WWE speak. But, oh, man, I could not be more excited. This is literally it's one of the last 2 things on my wrestling bucket list. And you've truly seen it all. I have not been quite as lucky, although I've seen quite a bit, but the Royal Rumble has been the main thing on my bucket list. So I'm so excited to see it in person and with this awesome crew that we have developed over the past few years and that has continued to grow and expand. So I'm looking forward to the trip, to getting away from home. I'm looking forward to all of that. But also, hey, we're getting a ladder match at the Royal Rumble, which oddly enough, I have never been able to see a ladder match in person through the mini shows that I've seen. So I'm getting a twofer and knocking off really. I'm good now. I don't have to go to another wrestling show again.
You might retire. Yeah,
I might retire. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for you and Travis both getting to your first Royal Rumble ever. I've been to a few, but for me, I remember that was probably. I think back to like my first pay-per-view, and there's that moment where like the crowd went dark and the warning sign popped up on the screen, and just being like filled with goosebumps, like, oh my gosh, like this feels so big time. And I'd say like my first Rumble was definitely like that. It felt like it was just like the most fun hour of that I'd ever had at a wrestling show. And then I lucked out too because I was at Rumble 2008, which I consider the best Rumble of all time. And it was just so cool to be there at Madison Square Garden to see such a fun-filled show and so many different things. And, I think it's like the perfect blend of anticipation, surprise. And then, of course, usually the winner, I think, is usually whittled down. It's 30 individuals that are there, but usually you can pick the winner out of probably 5 names tops. But I think that's what makes it great, which makes it so much fun.
Absolutely. And I just hope that this year's Royal Rumble does not end up on this list of the top 10 worst Royal Rumbles. It doesn't have to be the best, but I just hope it's not one of the worst.
Well, I will say I do think there's probably a few that I did not include on my list because of that live bias. I feel like they probably, and looking back, maybe there's 1 or 2 I could have, but when you're there live, it's a different type of deal than when you're watching at home, and it's good memories I have with those. So anything, so I guess we could go ahead and get started. I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of go back and forth. We'll talk about each one of the different Rumbles that we have on the list. Do you want to go ahead and kick us off with your number 10 worst Royal Rumble of all time?
Yeah, I can't say I'm excited to, but we'll dive into it. And I'll just say, you kind of qualified your list. Mine is definitely very slanted to the past 25 years, which is a long time. It's a long chunk of time. But I don't have much from the earliest Rumbles, and it's nostalgia. There are probably a lot of people watching this who might say, oh my gosh, the 1991 Royal Rumble is so much worse than the 2020 Royal Rumble or something like that. Not that either of those are on my list necessarily. I'll leave you the suspense. But, a lot of people might say that. But for me, I'm always going to gravitate to like a 91 or 90 Royal Rumble in my rewatching because that's peak nostalgia for me. Yeah. Like, I don't care if the action in the ring is quite as good. I'm always going to gravitate towards that. And so for me, what made the things that made my list, that made me think about some of these bad Royal Rumbles or worst Royal Rumbles would be lack of star power. If there's just a really crummy roster of people in there, predictable / boring / wrong winners. Those are things that qualified in my picks. A lack of surprises or memorable moments that weighed heavy in my rankings as well. Because like we said, a lot of these matches can be really fun and have good things in them, but generally those are the things that kind of brought these down on my list. What about you? Like what qualified things to make your list? What are some of the reasons things went on your list?
Yeah, no, I completely, for me, I also think one of the things I factored into it was the hype and then the letdown that came with it too. The Rumble is the type of show that sometimes you get some real classic matches on there, which we visited last year. But there's other times you get nothing on there. You're getting Bob Holly and Brock Lesnar. You're getting, the Diet Pep, was it the Black Mountain Dew Pitch Black?
Mountain Dew Pitch Black match.
You're getting like that. And that one, I did have an event. We all were trying the Pitch Black Mountain Dew. We all enjoyed doing that. But for the most part, like, you get this weird type of matches where they're just throwing something out there because they don't have to give you anything more, especially with the 2 Rumbles. And you're hoping at least one of them is going to be good enough to have that lasting impression and go through. So for me, it was
What was the one you brought up in the group chat? I think it was the dark match, but you brought it up. The tag team match.
Yeah, so I went back and I was watching the 2019 Royal Rumble. One of my favorite shows. I went there live. From New York to Arizona. And as I'm sitting there watching the show, I was remembering my wife throughout the show being like, my gosh, how many matches are on this show? And it is by far the most matches they've ever done. And it was on the main card. You had 5 additional matches on top of the 2 Rumbles. And then you also had 3 pre-show matches. And kicking things off was the team of Bobby Roode and Chad Gable taking on the makeshift duo of Razor and Scott Dawson, with the idea being that if Razor and Scott Dawson won, both AOP and the Revival would get a tag team title shot. And like, how absolutely nuts. I mean, like, the idea, and I remember being there 100% when that opened, doors open. We were there for the entire thing. So 10 matches, including 2 Rumbles. Just crazy at that stage.
Absolutely. That sounds like a match that's just like on the random generator on a SmackDown video game or something. I mean, that's ridiculous. But yeah, I do think if any pay-per-view is going to benefit from being 2 nights going forward, it's the Royal Rumble. Like it is. Yeah. It's too much of a good thing to have 2 Rumbles on one night. I've said that since the beginning, and I'm all for having a women's Royal Rumble. I personally think I would love if they just alternated years, and you know, because that way you don't run out of the same storylines so many times with the Royal Rumble, and you know, maybe or maybe do a women's Royal Rumble in January, a men's one in July, or something like that. I don't know. That's a different podcast. We can talk about that.
It's a good point, though, because like you think about it, and absolutely no disrespect to her. She's a legend in her own right. I'm sure she'll be in the WWE Hall of Fame someday. But I promise you, Kelly has been a surprise entrant in the Women's Rumble almost every darn year. I mean, so you're talking about running out of ideas. They're running out of surprise entrants in some of these cases.
You are stealing some of my talking points going forward, my friend. So let me dive into it. I'll give you my number 10 here before you steal too many other things I'm going to talk about here. And I do think some of my list might be controversial to people and maybe to you as well. And this one it's my number 10 pick. So it's at the bottom of my list, which means I still think it's pretty good. But if I had to make a worst list, I put this one on here because the booking of it and the lodging of it frustrated me. And I'll explain why. But I'm going with the 2023 Men's Royal Rumble as my 10th worst of all time. Won by Cody Rhodes. Yeah. Very excited to see him win. Great choice for the winner. Definitely the right choice for the winner. But what I didn't like about this Rumble was we all knew he was making his comeback, his return from the pec injury on this night here. But he comes in at number 30. The big surprise entrance. We all know he's going to win, and he comes in at number 30. He's supposed to be the big babyface conquering hero, and he comes in at number 30. It's not a surprise. We all know he's coming. Meanwhile, the big heel, Gunther, comes in at number 1. And he has an incredible performance, and it's great. He sets the record for the longest time ever in any Royal Rumble in this match. But he's the heel. Right. That should be the babyface. Cody gets to come in at the end, and him and Gunther have like this nice little match at the end, and it's all well and good, but it's just so backwards to me that, you know, the heel is the one who's overcoming the odds and is beating everybody, and the babyface just gets to luckily come in at the end and toss him out. And I think that booking is so silly and wrong, and that's why I had to put it down there at the bottom for me.
It's such a good point you make, because I remember I had my family come over for this. I had a little party for it with some friends and family. My mother was watching, and my mother's Austrian, not born here, but her family background is Austrian. So Gunther comes out. She's never seen him, but she's like, this is my guy. He's going to win the Rumble. And the whole way through, he's still there. And she's like, oh, my God, he's going to. And so all of us start really getting behind Gunther because my mother is so pumped about this, even though, he's the dastardly heel. We should be rooting for Cody. And you're 100% right. I understand why they announced Cody was coming back with all the video packages and all that. But in retrospect, you wonder if maybe they had done the surprise entrant coming back at the end and winning a couple of times. But you wonder if maybe they should have went that way here. Do you think that would have made things better, or do you think we kind of all knew already?
I do. It wasn't the worst thing that they announced it beforehand, but it bothered me that he came in at 30. You know, have him come in at 20 or have him come in at 25 even. Like we've also seen lately a lot of people coming in at 30 over the past 10 years or so and winning. It feels a little bit played out and predictable for that to happen. And I will say there's the one surprise is Booker T in this Rumble, which
good point.
We love Booker T.
Really a surprise. Yeah,
I mean, he's been a surprise 3 or 4 other times. And the no NXT people, no surprise entries, no returns, unexpected. And you're not always guaranteed that in a Rumble, but it does certainly make a Rumble better when you have those things, and you don't have that in this one.
That's a great point. It definitely does make a Royal Rumble better, and I think it really adds to the excitement of the Royal Rumble when you get those surprises in there, even if it is a goofy surprise or two, which is going to definitely one of them coming up my list has a couple of those goofy surprises. But great point there. For me, this one pains me because it is one of my absolute favorite years to be a fan. I know it's no one else's favorite year to be a fan, but it certainly is mine. I have so much nostalgia for this era of WWE, but I didn't really enjoy the Rumble match, and on the rewatch, I didn't enjoy it either. I went with the Royal Rumble 2013. They had an access at this Rumble where they did an NXT tournament to determine who would win and get a Rumble slot. I love that part of it. And that was Bo Dallas who won that spot. He actually gets a push, eliminates Wade Barrett. That's a good part of it. But this one is just absolute. While you have some fun things going on with like Team Hell No in the Rumble and great return from Jericho, who I remember like made it abundantly clear 100% he won't be in the Rumble. And then, of course, there he comes out and shows up and goes most of the – him and Dolph kind of run the course of the Rumble from 1 and 2, which is really cool. And I'll never – I was watching this, doing a rewatch of this with my daughter and did not expect Dolph Ziggler to have such an immense tonsil hockey battle with AJ Lee. She was mortified. Was like, what is he doing? And I was like, trying to turn off the TV. But you know, Cena comes in there, and I remember watching it at the time and thinking, well, there's no way it's gonna. If Cena wins, there's no way at least The Rock's gonna win the title. That's all I cared about at this Rumble was we got to preserve the title on CM Punk. And I know if Cena wins, because Rock and Punk come after that. So I remember like all of us are watching. We're like, if Cena wins, at least we know Punk's gonna retain, because no way are they gonna do twice in a lifetime. And then of course, Cena wins and eliminates Ryback in the end, which I thought was a huge mistake because I really thought they were right on the precipice with Ryback. He could have broke through at this stage. They had like a 6-month period with him where he felt like he was one of the next big things. And unfortunately, they go with Cena, and then Rock wins the title anyway. And you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, they're going to do it again. So yeah, it felt like Cena was the only winner. And of course, he ends up being the winner.
LOL, Cena wins. It's
exactly.
Right in that era. Yeah, this one did not make my list, but it was under consideration for me. It's probably right there on the outside tier for all those same reasons you said. Just not a particularly memorable one, and it does lead to a match that people were not really clamoring for and excited for. But overall, you know, the match itself, I didn't hate it, so I didn't. I don't have such ill will towards it, so it didn't quite make my list. But I respect all those reasons, and I think you make a good point for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, I'm gonna go not too far away from that for my number 9 worst Royal Rumble. I'm going to 2012 to that year's Royal Rumble. Now, Tommy, how many people are traditionally in a Royal Rumble match?
Be 30.
That would be 30, correct. How many people in this Royal Rumble match do you think are not actual roster members on the roster at this time?
Oh, boy. I'm going to say 7.
9. 9 legends / managers in this Royal Rumble, including Ricardo Rodriguez. And this is where all 3 announcers get into the Royal Rumble. Jerry Lawler, Michael Cole, JBL all hop into the Rumble. Cute, funny, enjoyable. I like that, you know, at the time. But then when you add in also Karma is in this Royal Rumble, who, again, cool spot, cool moment, but there's just too much of it. Mick Foley is in this Rumble doing Mr. Sacco with Santino. It's all goofy. It's too much goofy, too much silly, too much comedy, too many legends. You want one of those moments. You don't want 9 of those moments in the Royal Rumble.
Like, none of those surprises have any real substance. They're great for a ha-ha, but it's nobody who you think is like, for years it was always, oh man, AJ Styles is going to come to the Royal Rumble. For years it was like, AJ's going to be in the Rumble. And then he finally showed up and was like, oh my gosh, like, this guy might actually win. These guys, none of these guys are winning. Michael Cole isn't winning the Rumble and going on to WrestleMania to face John Cena.
Which is fine. You can have 1 or 2 of those, but you get too many of them. You're like, well, I'm wasting my time watching this thing. And then I've said this many times before. Sheamus has just never been one of my favorite wrestlers. I like him a lot more now as grizzled old man Sheamus. But 2012 Sheamus, oh boy, it was just turn off the TV for me. And the fact that he goes on to win the Royal Rumble, then goes on to beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, it was just I felt like I wasted my $40 at the time ordering this pay-per-view. So frustrating. I probably knew he was going to win at the time, but just left a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you're right, too. I mean, I feel like that also played a little bit of a factor for me, too, is did we pay the full amount for the Rumble? I think pay makes a certain point for that, too. I'm with you with, like, the older ones I feel like get a pass to a certain extent. I'll talk about them a little later on as we get through. Because they are. You're so nostalgic for all of it. But as you're older and you start to like, hey, I paid $40 for this. Was it worth my investment? And when it's not, it used to get really frustrating. I'd be like, I paid $40, $50 for this. And I remember at one point my family went out and got like an HD TV and you had no choice but to pay like even more for a pay-per-view. And so, yeah, no, I'm with you there. For me, number 9, another one that I think is probably one that people rate much higher than me. And I hope that Randy Turco, our good friend, is sitting there with earmuffs. I'm going to go with the Royal Rumble 2009 match. I like this match as a match, but going into this, 100% who's winning this Rumble. Right before this Rumble is the big angle with Randy Orton laying out Vince McMahon, having that whole deal with him. And in the opening package to the Rumble, it's when they go through, they usually talk about all the men who are going to be in the Rumble. All they do is just talk about Randy Orton and his psychotic kind of character at the time and doing this, that, and the third. And the Rumble match, I mean, again, at this point, there's a ton of guys who are like really good. But I think it's Cody Rhodes has done an interview recently that like from 2009 to 2000, it was like 2008 to 2011, they had a bunch of guys who just didn't know what to really do with. You had John Cena and you had Randy Orton in there all the time because those were your stabilizing forces. But other than that, they had all these guys kind of on the rise, and you didn't know who was going to break out and stick. And that's really, I think, really seen here. Kozlov has a bit of a piece in this. He comes out, he gets rid of Khali. It leads to Triple H coming out and getting rid of him and going on a run. But I think 2009 Triple H, we're getting a little long in the tooth with Triple H. 2025 Triple H, don't even get me started. But 2009 feels like we're past the point of the Triple H. But I think they realize that. I think that's eventually why he does another run with DX. But I like the legacy piece of this. There is a great return in this Rumble. RVD returns out of nowhere, which is an awesome piece. And a fun moment where Hacksaw Jim Duggan's in this Rumble towards the end.
I remember that too.
That's kind of cool. But at the end of the day, it comes down to all of legacy in there with Triple H. And of course, Randy Orton gets the win, which made a lot of sense because he figured, all right, well, are they going to suspend Randy Orton for laying out Vince McMahon? But now that he won the Rumble, they couldn't. So again, they kind of set a great storyline leading up to the WrestleMania 25 main event between Hunter and Randy, but he sacrificed the Rumble here in doing so.
Yeah, again, this one did not make my list, but I did consider it for my list for all those same reasons. And boy, Randy Orton is up there with Sheamus for me as far as guys I just never latched on to at this time period. Nowadays, give me Randy Orton. Like I love old man Randy Orton. I'm here for it every time he's on TV. But oh my gosh, 2009, it was just torture to me. Yeah. And the legacy was so boring. I just found the whole thing boring. And yeah, it was a boring winner. And honestly, I don't have a good reason why it's not on my list. You just explained a lot of reasons why it should have been, and it was a very obvious winner. It made sense, but it was just a little too obvious. There was nobody else. I don't have the roster pull up in front of me, but there's probably like nobody else you could point to as even a possibility to win this one.
Probably either be him or Hunter, and I think at that point you don't need Hunter winning the Rumble. I think he's way past there at that point. That's why it made my list.
Let's just hope they don't force poor Hunter out there in front of us at the Royal Rumble in Indianapolis. I know he would just hate being out there again.
Yeah, welcoming us to the Rumble like you did SummerSlam, you could tell that ate him alive having to go out there and do that.
The cringe in him is just, it's palpable.
For sure. Like the big reveal with the, what's in the like little hole to start off
Yeah.
And,
they totally tricked him for being out there. He thought he was just backstage in Gorilla.
For sure.
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit further for my next one, my number 8 on my list. Number 8. Yeah. So I'm going to go back again. I think this one is held pretty high regards, but again, the finish for this one just landed flat for me, and that's the 2003 Royal Rumble.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar winning this one. And what bugs me about this one, what's bugged me for 22 years about it, is the show starts out with Brock Lesnar versus Big Show. That's the opening match on this card, and it is for a spot in the Royal Rumble. There's one spot left in the Royal Rumble. Paul Heyman's been trying to keep Brock Lesnar out of the Royal Rumble. And so Brock Lesnar has to go through Big Show. He does, as the babyface should. He has to overcome the odds. And, of course, Brock Lesnar's going to win the Royal Rumble. That's fine. We talked about it. Predictability is okay with the Royal Rumble. Sometimes it's just somebody's time to win, and that's fine. But you would think the story is Brock Lesnar has to overcome the odds. He had to wrestle a match earlier in the show. Nobody else had to wrestle a match earlier in the show. He ends up coming in at number 29 in the Royal Rumble.
Wow.
What sort of odds is that really? Who cares that he had a match earlier in the night and he gets to come in second to last? If you're going to tell that story, you got to have him come in at like 15 at the minimum, if not earlier. And so, why even do any of that story? He just comes in, he's in there for 5 minutes, and he wins the Royal Rumble. Just such a complete waste of time to me.
Yeah, I remember, for me, the big thing about Royal Rumble 2003 and why I hold it to such a higher regard is because it's the Matt Hardy show. He is in that Rumble for about half the Rumble. He's doing all the fun stuff. Matt Hardy, for the longest time, was my favorite wrestler. And this incarnation, the V1, version 1 Matt Hardy, so him doing all the fun stuff with Shannon Moore, and then would come out, all the Matt facts would always be like, Matt is the longest SmackDown superstar who's in the Rumble the longest. So that's like the only thing I really remember from that 2003 Royal Rumble, but I remember eating it up and starting to go, has Matt got a chance to really win this year and go on to WrestleMania? So for me, I think that era is just such a big, I love that era of WWE. Looking back on it, some of that's pretty rough, but but you're right. I did not remember Lesnar coming in at 29. That's terrible. What bad booking.
Well, you make a good point. There are good things in it, and we can point to good things in any of these matches, and it's fun to see guys like that get their time to shine in the Rumble. But the other thing I didn't like about this one, and why it also put it over the top, is they advertised it to start. Number 1 and 2 are going to be Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels. And they're having their rivalry, and Shawn Michaels, his first Rumble back since he's made his return. And in my head, I've already fantasy booked this, that they're going to go coast to coast. They're not necessarily going to win it, but they're going to be in there the whole time trying to best each other. And they're going to tell that the reason they're coming in at 1 and 2 is they're going to go an hour in this thing. And Shawn Michaels is the first person eliminated due to a chair shot or something. Jericho he cheats in some way and gets Shawn Michaels out of there first. And it's like, what a bait and switch. So stupid and annoying at the time. And Shawn Michaels is my favorite at the time. So that always pissed me off.
You're right. It was Christian or something who came in and knocked him out, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, or I think he comes out and you think it's Jericho. And he turns around revealing it's Christian, and then Jericho attacks Michaels from behind, setting up their Mania match.
That's it.
Yeah, that was a total bait and switch. Now you got me hot thinking about that one. Number 8 for me, I'm going exactly where you went a little while ago. Royal Rumble 2012. Also got to put in perspective as to where I'm at right now with the Rumble. I went in 2008, 2009, took the year off. Went back in 2010, went in 2011. It's like my favorite thing in the entire world. I absolutely adore the Royal Rumble at this point. So 2012 comes around, I'm not going, but I'm like, hey, we're going to all get together. We're going to watch this. This is going to be great. You can't screw up the Rumble. And when we sat down to think about this was actually going to be my 3rd worst of all time. But when I went back and rewatched it, it was pretty entertaining. There's some stuff in this that is so silly. the stuff that you mentioned there with Sacco and the Cobra, so ridiculous. But I will say this: the crowd is like absolutely electric for this battle between Sacco and,
sure.
and the Cobra. So I mean that part, the idea that like the Michael Cole's so upset, I think at King and I guess it was King and maybe King and Booker.
I think it's Booker T. Yeah, Booker I said JBL, but it's Booker T.
Oh, maybe it's JBL.
No, it's Booker T. I'm pretty sure.
Booker T. Yeah. So they both go in, and Cole's all angry, and then he goes in later on, and then Karma shows up to kind of counteract him. You're right. It's so ridiculous, and I think my biggest issue with this one is it makes the Royal Rumble feel like unimportant and a mid card. And I know they're doing that because you already got your main event for WrestleMania. It's Cena and Rock. So at the end of the day, they probably felt they didn't need to. But at the end, I remember getting really excited and thinking, oh, here comes Jericho. This is his year. Makes sense. He'll give us the dream match, Jericho versus Punk at Mania. Can't ask for anything better than that. And they do that. So Jericho should have been the winner. This is the one year the predictable guy should have got it. And instead they go with probably my least favorite character in all of wrestling, maybe forever, the 1-800 fella era Sheamus. Horrible babyface.
Oh, you're giving me nightmares. It's giving me hives thinking about that.
It's so bad. Sheamus from 2012 to 2013 was awful. And this guy was, I remember being there where Cena, the Raw, a year later, where Cena's trying to figure out his opponent for SummerSlam, and he's asking the fans to cheer for them. And I was at this Raw, and I remember he went to Sheamus, and I was just boo! Like everybody was booing this man. Like he was such a cornball babyface, and so for him to get the win, it was just like, no, of all people, how do you go back to this guy? So that part was infuriating. So while there are some fun parts to this, everything is very mid-card about this Royal Rumble, and that's why it's number 8 on my list.
I hadn't thought about that reason of the Rock and Cena already being set in stone as this, making this Rumble feel a little bit throwaway at the time. But that absolutely, that makes perfect sense, and is why this one probably has so much comedy in it and so much fluff and silliness in it.
Yeah, so weird, the tout era of WWE, I call it.
Yep. Unfortunately, yes. Well, I'm going to break the seal here, and I'm gonna be the bad guy and be the first person to put a women's Royal Rumble on either of our lists. And I'm gonna go with the 2020 Women's Royal Rumble as my 7th worst Royal Rumble of all time. Now, Tommy, how many people traditionally are in a Royal Rumble match?
Yes, 30 people in the Royal
30
Rumble.
entrants in the Royal Rumble match. How many people that are not on the Raw or SmackDown roster do you think are in this Royal Rumble match?
Oh boy, the women's could be rough. I'm gonna say it right there. I'm gonna go with 9, right there with the 2012 one.
Would you believe it if I told you 15?
Oh my god!
Half of the entrants are NXT or Legends. Terrible. And it is a common thread through women's Royal Rumbles. They've just they've never had quite enough women, or maybe they don't have enough confidence in the women they do have, that they just constantly are putting Legends and NXT people in there, and the same Legends. For example, Kelly, as you mentioned, and Molly Holly, who already were Legends 2 years ago in the first Royal Rumble, were already recycling the same Legends 3 years into the Women's Royal Rumble. And I love both of those ladies. I'm big fans of both of them, but come on.
Yeah, no,
come on.
I mean, yeah, I agree.
And look, I'm all for NXT representation in the Royal Rumble, but there are 13 NXT people in this world. There are more NXT people than there are Raw and SmackDown people, which would, like, if you advertise it as that, like, oh yeah, we're going to have Raw, SmackDown, and NXT equally represented in this Royal Rumble. Cool. I'm on board with that. That sounds great. But when you just are randomly having them in here, you know none of those people are going to win. So we're wasting your time. It's just constantly. And if you don't watch NXT at the time, which I really wasn't in 2020, it's just like, I don't care about Candice LeRae or Dakota Kai or Xia Li or Mercedes Martinez. Like, no disrespect against them.
Wow, Mercedes.
I personally didn't care about them in 2020. Yeah. They're not on Raw, SmackDown. I don't know them. I don't care about them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't do anything for any of them when there's so many of them coming up.
Takes away. If you've already seen 10 other people in there, what's the big deal about Tegan Nox coming in to the Royal Rumble? I don't care anymore when she's the 28th person and there's been 12 other NXT people in there.
Yeah, I remember feeling similarly to that when I was at the 2019 one, and they brought out, I think it was Casey Catanzaro, and I was like, she's not even on NXT. Like,
right.
She's like a total performance center woman. So. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a really good shot. And it's 2020. Is that the one Charlotte wins and then goes on to face Rhea Ripley, right?
Charlotte wins and goes on to face Rhea Ripley at the Performance Center, COVID Mania. And Santina Marella is also in this Royal Rumble, which gosh. I love Santino. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I will go on the record and say that. But Santina in the Royal Rumble, come on, what are we doing, man? It's almost disrespectful, you know.
It really is. I'm stunned there wasn't more of an outrage. Like the year when Carmella won the Money in the Bank because Ellsworth helped her, and then people were so angry they had to redo the match on SmackDown. I'm stunned people weren't so upset that Santino took one of the spots in the Women's Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it was a letdown.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to break the seal here, and I'm going to go with one of the earlier Royal Rumbles. And this one was really tough for me because I absolutely adore this story that's told during the Rumble. But as far as a Rumble match goes, it isn't very good. And that is the Royal Rumble 1999, No Chance in Hell. I remember as a kid loving this Royal Rumble. Because I actually had a bit of Austin fatigue getting into 1999. And the obvious winner for me, 100%, was Stone Cold Steve Austin. It felt like he was going to win going into it. And he does a good job kind of fighting the odds throughout. He's in the backstage area, and he's getting rid of all the different corporate members that are going after him. And he gets all the way to the end, and then he goes to that final hurdle, and in comes Corporate Rock. Knocks him out. Vince McMahon wins, and I was elated. The happiest I'd ever been at a Rumble. Like, completely, no one thought Vince was going to win. I remember going, Rock versus Vince at Mania. Let's go. Like, I was so pumped up. But that being said, the rest of this Rumble is just not. This feels almost like if the Rumble took place on Monday Night Raw. It's a whole bunch of backstage segments. The crowd is super hot because everyone at this stage is over. So, like, you have that great crowd bopping to Gangrel's music, going nuts for the oddities and all that. But there's just not much going on in the ring. Like, I can't even tell you. The only other thing I can tell you happens in this match is Taker shows up and turns Mabel into Viscera. That's, like, the only thing I remember on this show. And maybe, I don't know if this is the one where Kane gets taken out in the straitjacket, too, and eliminated. But other than that, it's just a whole lot of nothing. And it's all just the Rumble match is a backdrop to the stuff going on with Austin and McMahon.
Yeah, if I was unbiased and didn't have nostalgia goggles on, I do think I'd probably put this one on my list because we did a watch along for it on Talking Taker at the beginning of 2004. It was the 25-year anniversary for it, and it is kind of a mess. And it's got the opposite problem of some other Royal Rumbles where it feels like too many people are in there for way too long. I don't think anyone's in this match for like more than 5 minutes at a time, besides Austin and McMahon, who are not even literally in it the whole time, even though they go the distance. But yeah, like Kane comes in and he's red hot and he throws everybody out, and then the orderlies come out like 2 minutes later. And China comes in and she's red hot and she has a great moment, and then she gets eliminated like 3 minutes later. And that's the whole thing. Like nothing really happens in there. But as you said, the crowd is so hot. There's so many just iconic characters in here that I do think it's more fun to watch to me than some of these other ones. And so I didn't put it on my list, but I totally think it's fair to say it's one of the worst ones.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because it's a fun time. And, of course, leading up to this, you have, as you mentioned, that great corporate Royal Rumble where China ends up coming out and tossing Vince and getting number 30.
That's
Austin
probably better
McMahon
than the
vignettes.
actual pay-per-view Rumble.
Yeah, for sure. The Austin McMahon vignettes with Shane, catch that chicken. So great. Iconic stuff. But yeah, the match itself just fell a little flat.
I think it's maybe same problem as SummerSlam 98, the Highway to Hell Undertaker Stone Cold match. I have so much nostalgia about that match, but when you go back and watch it, it's not that great. And I realize I just have nostalgia for the build up to it. And that's kind of how I feel about Rumble 99. Like, it's not that good, but I love the build up to it. There's so much going on to it. Like, that's the picture that's painted in my mind, is all the build up to it.
Yeah. And I do remember my family looking at me completely disgusted as I cheered on Vince McMahon too. What are you doing? So, boy, would they be disgusted if I was doing that in 2024.
Yeah, that'd be a different story.
Yeah. So.
Well, speaking of winners that people were disgusted by, that's going to be my number 6. It's probably a little low, it was lower, but I kept pushing it higher the more I thought about it. And if we waited a couple more days to do this, it might be even higher. But landed at number 6 for me, 2014 Royal Rumble, won by Dave Batista. They're making his big comeback and big return after a few years. Again, everybody knew going into it, Batista's going to win this. He's gotten the big build up, the big return. And that was fine. I'm a huge Batista fan. I always have been, so I was cool with it. But that's not what anybody wanted to see. We all were part of the Yes movement. We all wanted Daniel Bryan in there. And we all know the story. Daniel Bryan's not even in the match. It's so bad that it gets Rey Mysterio, one of the greatest baby faces of all time, booed when he's number 30 and everyone realizes there's no shot for Daniel Bryan to come in the match.
Yeah, just so deflating for sure. And for me, my number 6 is the Royal Rumble 2014.
Okay.
And reason
I had a feeling it had to be on there.
Yeah, for sure. And, forever I almost lumped this in with the Royal Rumble 2015, which I do think is unfair, because I do think this match has some solid action in the match. There's some bright spots. And I think what really did it for me is I just watched the Batista documentary that WWE Vault put up about his return. And it actually kind of made me because I was the most angry that Batista was going to get the win here for me for this Rumble. And I remember we went out that day and a couple of our friends got engaged, and I was like, we've got to get home. The Rumble's on, and I'm telling Erica, you're going to love it. This is the greatest night in all WWE. 2013 was, and it was our first one together, and now here's the 2014 one, and that one isn't good either. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I really think for me, the big mistake WWE makes in hindsight here is that if they decided to switch course and call an audible and have Roman Reigns eliminate Batista and win the Rumble, they would have gotten Roman Reigns to where they wanted him to be in the following years. When it comes down, he has a great Rumble. He looks awesome in this.
Oh, yeah. Star-making performance.
Yeah, I think he actually ties Kane's record, which had been the record that no one was coming near for the longest time. And he just looks like $1 million. And at the end, he hits a spear on Batista, and the place is going nuts. They're ready for this guy to get it. If you think about it, Shield doesn't do anything on that WrestleMania. They're in a throwaway. I don't even remember what they did. They're on something.
I think it's with the New Age Outlaws and Kane, maybe.
Yeah,
Corporate
maybe. I think it's Outlaws and Kane against the Shield.
Yeah.
And
Come on.
They could have done that and had Batista wrestle Hunter, and then they wouldn't have even needed to go with Daniel Bryan. People would have been behind. Maybe they could have pivoted entirely off it. But I remember sitting there with my friends, and we're getting to number 30, which at this point has been customarily the big spot, right? You remember Cena. You remember a couple other folks coming in at 30, and everyone's going, who's left? And I'm going, nobody's left. No. It's Daniel Bryan. Here we go. We're all up, and everyone's doing the 10-9-8. And then Booyaka happens, and we're like, no. we forgot Ray. And I think everyone in the building, I don't know if was he a surprise? Like, nobody thought he was coming out.
Yeah. It was a surprise, maybe at that time. But yeah, oh, what a letdown. And poor Ray. I'm a huge Rey Mysterio fan, and that broke my heart a little bit. But yeah, just a massive miscalculation there. And it all worked out for the best. Batista turned heel, and he was even better as a heel. And Daniel Bryan got his moment, and it worked better for part of that story. But just in the moment, it's so uncomfortable, so frustrating as a fan, so disappointing as a fan, and so funny in hindsight that you're right. They could have had a natural, organic babyface moment for Roman Reigns there if they'd switched course. I remember watching it thinking maybe they would, maybe they'd call the audible, because it was such a vocal reaction against Batista.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, the bottom five here. Let's crack the top five here. I'm not going to go too far back. I'm going to go with the 2022. Ooh, you're going to hate me for this one, buddy. I'm going to go with the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble here, Tommy. And it's mainly because of your boy, Shane O'Mac, getting the huge babyface push here. I'm a Shane O'Mac fan. I appreciate him at his time, but this was a little bit past his time for me, especially to come in and make this run and for it to be absolutely meaningless because he's gone. Yeah. He gets in a fight with his dad.
Right?
Yeah, he gets fired by his dad.
Terrible.
So it doesn't even matter. So there's that, plus Brock Lesnar coming in at 30 and winning the whole thing. Just such a letdown. He'd lost the title earlier in the night, and he just comes back and wins again and sets us up for Roman versus Brock 3, which I don't think anybody in the world was asking for that trilogy there at WrestleMania. I mean, what are we doing here? Brock Lesnar, at the time, despite, whatever personal things are going on with him now, at the time, incredible performer, loved seeing him on TV, but I just was not dying for another Roman Brock match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, no. There was some stuff there that was not so great. For me, I guess I lied. I said there was only the pay-per-view Rumbles that are going to be on the list, but I actually had the very first Rumble here at number 5.
Okay.
Technically a television special. I almost feel bad putting it on the list. It's the very first one. They don't know what they're doing yet. They don't even know if this is going to be a success. It's only 20 men. But WWE Vault put this up, and between me watching, I've been a WWE Vault fiend, and it doesn't really hold up, unfortunately. It's a good moment at the end where Hacksaw wins, crowd goes nuts for that, but there's just not much to this one, and so that if we're going over that, that's why I have it here at number 5. I don't even have anything I really hate about it. It just kind of dragged in pieces of it.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I said at the beginning. I just have too much nostalgia for that era for me to really put those at the bottom. I completely get why it would be, and I gave it that, and like 89 almost made my list because Big John Studd really is the winner of all people.
Yeah.
But I gave him a little bit more weight because we didn't even know what the Rumble was. Like, we didn't know how important it was going to become at that time. It was just a thing they put on TV at that time. So there wasn't as much thought put into it. But you're right. It's not important. It's kind of meaningless. It's kind of trivial. So it completely is fair to be there at the bottom. It does not hold up against the great Royal Rumbles.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of people probably put 89 on there on the list too. I don't have it on mine either. Even though Stud wins, and it makes no sense because he doesn't really do anything with that after that. But I love the start to the dissension there between the Mega Powers, Axe and Smash 1 and 2. There's some fun stuff in that. I like the 89 Rumble, certainly a lot more than 88. And I always thought it was the first one. And so when I got the anthology and saw that, oh my gosh, there's one before this, and then watched it, and I was like, oh man, this isn't very good.
I felt the same way. I'd always read about that Rumble, and there wasn't like a VHS release of it. and I was too young to have seen it when it first aired. So for 20 years, I wanted to see that Royal Rumble, and then you finally watch it, and you're like, okay, that was that was 30 minutes of my life. I'll never get back. But it is what it is. It's the first one, so I give it a little bit of grace there. But I get why there. For me, I'm not going to go very far for my number 4. From my number 5, I'm going to go straight to the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble.
There you go.
Just a disastrous year for Royal Rumbles in my book was 2022. Tommy, how many people traditionally are in a Royal Rumble match?
I'm going to go with 30.
30.
For that one.
How many legends, huge air quotes here, how many legends are in this Royal Rumble match?
I'm going to, I'm going to say 10 on this one.
It's going to be a dozen. Over a third of the entrants are legends such as Kelly.
Oh, yeah, she's back again. Jeez.
Alicia Fox. Summer Rae. Everyone was begging for a Summer Rae appearance. Molly Holly, yet again.
Oh, Lord. Well, Molly Holly had 3 returns at the darn Rumble. That's crazy.
Perhaps the most unforgivable one ever. Cameron of the Funkadactyls making a Royal Rumble appearance. Who in the world was asking for that? Oh,
man. Yeah, not good.
And that's what it all comes down. There's just too many legends in this match. And legends is not even the right term. Like, give me a break, man. You're wasting my time here.
Yeah, no, not good. Not good.
Not good.
And that was your number 5 or 4?
That's my number 4.
4. Okay. For me, number 4, I know, again, it's kind of that nostalgia piece, but I hate to say it, but it is going to be the Royal Rumble 1995. And the reason for that is a couple of reasons. First and foremost, in this Rumble alone, you got Jacob and Eli Blue. You've got Duke the Dumpster Droese. Timothy Wells, Stephen Dunn, Mantar, Dick Murdoch. Why is he back? I don't have any idea. After being the fresh upstart in 93, here he comes 2 years later. Aldo Montoya, Portuguese Man o' War. The Bushwhackers in 1995. I apologize to your parents and other big fans. And the Heavenly Bodies. Who I don't remember being in WWE in 95 at all. I mean, just a dozen of the lowest of the low card. And they know it because they lessen the entrance for 1 minute. And even though half of this is really bad, I still don't want a 1 minute 1 minute between entrance. It went way too quick. It was way too fast. You didn't even really get a chance to really start to enjoy it. Would probably have been even higher on my list if not for the great story they tell. Because going into this, I remember not knowing who was going to win because there really wasn't, like, Shawn was on the rise, but he was not a bona fide main eventer yet.
Nope.
And even though Bulldog, who's there with him from 1 and 2 to the end, he's certainly not a main eventer. So, he'd had a couple of he'd had a couple of main events, but nothing where he was like a top guy. So they start off 1 and 2. First time ever they had done it where 1 and 2 make it all the way to the end. And then you've got this great moment where Bulldog eliminates Michaels, so you think, and his music hits. And I remember just as a little kid, all of us like, what? Davey Boy is going to be the main event of WrestleMania? Like, so excited they'd put him over. And then Shawn comes, eliminates him, and then, I think some of Vince McMahon's best work as an announcer, where he's just doing the 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot of Shawn Michaels hit the floor. And, they could have screwed that up. Shawn could have easily fallen out like they did in 2000 where Rock touches before Big Show.
Oh, yeah.
But Shawn, just an incredible athlete, gets out of it, eliminates Bulldog. And so it is a great finish, but that's really all it has.
I'd go on record and say it's the best finish in Royal Rumble history. And there's been a lot of great ones, but I still think that one holds up as the best one. And just what a dumpster fire of a roster there. I mean, it's all tag teams in the Royal Rumble. And just generally, those are dead spots. Like anytime you're at a party and you got the Royal Rumble pool and you're excited, your number's up, and it's a tag team guy that comes in. You just like crumple that paper off and throw it away. That's that entire Royal Rumble.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is like, who is it? Montez Ford. You've got no disrespect to him, but he's got no chance to win the Royal Rumble. So, yeah, no, I'm with you. The tag teams in the Rumble are rough.
Yeah, especially those tag teams.
Yeah.
All right, the bottom three.
The bottom three, right?
Bottom three right here. This is a year that I have a lot of fondness for. Like you had, what was your year at the beginning?
2013.
2013, yeah. I feel that way about this year, but this Royal Rumble is the drizzling you-know-whats, in my opinion. And much like this Royal Rumble, it was experimental. The 95 Rumble, you had every 60 seconds. Well, this year in 2011.
I knew it was going to be on your list, yeah.
You had 40 entrants.
Brutal.
Too many entrants. 30 is so perfect for the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is so brilliant because every 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever, you got a high spot. Somebody new coming in, something exciting happening. The match just keeps going. It's a thrill ride. 40 entrants is too many entrants, especially when you've got a chunk that goes like this. Starting at number 8, you've got Yoshitatsu, Husky Harris, Chavo Guerrero, Mark Henry, JTG, Michael McGillicuddy, Chris Masters, David Otunga, Tyler Rex, Vladimir Kozlov, R-Truth. Oh my goodness. That's
brutal.
That's 20 minutes a time of the Job Squad coming out there, man.
That's really rough. You're absolutely right.
And you knew, okay, they're experimenting. They're doing a 40-person Rumble. At least I knew in my head, well, they're going to have a winner that comes after number 30 so they can have it in the Royal Rumble numbers package. Like this was the highest entrant to ever win a Royal Rumble. So the whole time you're like, well, none of this matters until we get past number 30. They're not going to do this big experiment and not have it matter. So, of course, your winner for the night at number 38, not come into number 38, is Alberto Del Rio, who is just a winner who has maybe aged as poorly as Big John Studd. Like, we really let Alberto Del Rio win a Royal Rumble, and he didn't even win at WrestleMania either. I mean, this one sucks.
Yeah. Well, for me, this one is because I was there, 100%. Rose-colored glasses, there with two of my best buds, New York to Boston, love and life, the start of one of my favorite years, went to Mania, went to Survivor Series. And so even though, especially as you're reading it, I'm like, boy, that is a rough batch. I just remember us being so pumped to be there for that. And I think for me, it was the Booker T surprise entrant. I'm marking out, bro, just like my boy Matt Stryker. Obviously, Diesel also comes out. Great.
Incredible.
Probably two of the top surprise entrants ever in the same match. But yeah, a lot of core, a lot of Nexus. And then the guy who saves the day from the Nexus is John Cena. So it's like, and then they do the deal where he and Hornswoggle have a period where they double team everyone. This really is a rough one. My gosh. And I'll ask you this. The big tease at the end. Alberto Del Rio wins. Santino comes from under the ring. Do you think this would go down as hands down the worst Rumble, or would this bump it up to a better standing if Santino tosses Alberto Del Rio and he wins the Rumble?
For me personally, I think I'd have to it'd go up in standing for me. Like I said, Santino's a legend in my book, and this was perfect use for Santino. This was perfect Royal Rumble comedy right here to have him come in out of nowhere, and he sells it so perfectly. I was dying for it to happen, but alas, Alberto Del Rio wins. And I don't even hate Del Rio all that much, but yeah, just didn't work out for him in WWE, so it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb when you go through the winners in history of the Royal Rumble match.
And I remember the three of us standing up there when Santino comes in. We completely forgot he was there. And we're like doing the hold on each other like, oh, is this going to happen? And could you imagine the moment, like leaving that Rumble and then getting ready for Raw the next night, knowing Santino had won the Rumble? Like, what a fun road to Mania that would have been. But instead, Alberto wins. And the only thing that was really funny was I remember Ricardo Rodriguez was doing Alberto for like 20 minutes. Like, as you're leaving, you just heard him over and over and over and over. And not a good one. And boy, thinking back, really not a good one. For my number 3, I have a little bit of a differing opinion than you do about one of your entrants, and I'll get to that here in a second. Because my number 3 is the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble.
Fair.
And one of the reasons why I dislike it so much is because we absolutely loved the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble.
Ooh.
I know. And I'm going to explain why in a second. But for a lot of people hate that one. I went back and rewatched it. I enjoyed it just as much.
Okay.
Great open with Melina coming in, having her moment there with Sasha Banks and getting the moment there, and thought that was really cool. I enjoyed some of the legend spots. This is a really good showing for Lita that actually leads to her getting a world title match. Ivory as right to censor Ivory, kind of a new one there. That one was cool. And even though Molly Holly had been used a couple times earlier, she returns as Mighty Molly, which made sense because you had it in there with Nikki ASH, almost superhero, who had just turned kind of heel. And we're huge Ronda Rousey fans. So Ronda comes back, and we're like, finally, we're going to get Ronda and Becky at WrestleMania. This is great. We were so pumped up. And then I went on Twitter to explain how excited I was. And someone went, that's not a surprise. She was leading the betting odds, just like Lesnar's leading the betting odds for the men.
God.
And I was about as I wanted to find this guy, and I was so angry because he ruined it. I didn't even think of Lesnar as being the guy to come in and win the Men's Royal Rumble. So then that Rumble happens, and we're so pumped up for the main event. And then it's just like the worst nothing happening Rumble ever. Madcap Moss, Ridge Holland, Rick Boogs. I mean, guys who have no chance to even bother with. That's a year they should have just went, hey, we're not going to do the Men's Rumble this year, guys. I'm sorry, but we don't got enough.
Those guys aren't even there 3 years later, man.
Right. It's crazy how bad it is. And I mean, I love Shane McMahon. My wife's a huge Bad Bunny fan, so we were excited to see them. But we don't need to see them at the end of the Rumble. As one of the I think both of them were in the final 4. And I mean, the story goes that the original winner for this was, at least according to him, was supposed to be Matt Riddle, which would have been crazy. I don't see that was in any way going to happen. He claims Lesnar shot it down and said, nope, I'm going to win it instead. I don't know if that was actually the plan, but it was rough, especially because it was in a stadium too. So we were thinking of going, and I couldn't imagine if we had gone to St. Louis for that, and then you get that crappy Rumble. I really sad. I have felt really bad if we had done that.
Oh, you would have loved seeing Shane McMahon in there.
Well, that's the problem.
It'd be one of your top 5 of all time.
I remember when Bad Bunny, my wife fell dead asleep, snoozed, probably 40 minutes of this Rumble. And then Bad Bunny comes in, I woke her up, and she's edge of her seat, ready to go. And then Shane comes out, we're both high-five, and we're our 2 favorite people in the world. So when it ended, I think both of us thought, oh, that was pretty good. But
yeah,
on a rewatch, it's insufferable. It's a horrible.
Well, I'm glad you agree with me a little bit on that one. Although I question your taste in the 2022 Women's Rumble, but yeah. But that's what makes this great. I love that this one, we're very different on this one. But I do have my number 2 in common with the one you just mentioned, and it is the 95 Royal Rumble. It is the one exception for the early days of the Rumble that I have to put it on there. And like I said, I think the finish is the greatest finish in Royal Rumble history. It was so creative at the time. It was so out of nowhere and so unexpected, and it made so much sense. And that tells you how bad the rest of the Rumble is, that I'm willing to move it all the way up to number 2. And for many years, it was probably the number 1 worst Rumble of all time. It comes down to the roster. You didn't even mention Men on a Mission in this Royal Rumble or Doink the Clown. I mean, just a complete lack of star power. Even at the time, you're watching it who is going to win this Royal Rumble. Like, there's Shawn Michaels, like you said, but he wasn't even really a top guy at that point. Bob Backlund had just lost the title 2 months ago, but he still already felt completely like a joke at this point.
Yeah.
So you knew he wasn't winning. You got Lex Luger, maybe, I guess, but you're probably not gonna do Lex Luger versus Diesel. Owen Hart is like the next top heel, and he's barely in it. Quang, is Quang gonna win the '95 Royal Rumble? I don't think so.
Bret Hart isn't even in it, right?
Bret Hart's not in it. No, he's in the title match against Diesel.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's and the 60-second thing is just nothing. There's a huge difference between 60 seconds and 90 seconds, or 60 seconds and 2 minutes. There's just no room to breathe. There's no room for anything to happen before you have to cut the camera back to the entryway and have somebody else come out there. So, man, what a disappointment the whole thing was.
Yeah, I completely agree. It really was. So for me, number 2, and I did include the Greatest Royal Rumble, and that's where it falls here on my list. So
not the greatest.
No, brutal. Absolutely. Those first Saudi Arabia shows, that first like 5 or 6, maybe more, were just so bad. And I think it was just WWE just thought for some reason that the fans in Saudi Arabia didn't really follow the product. And so all they wanted was like recycled legends. So here they do 50 men in the Royal Rumble. And I remember being like, oh, that sounds awesome. Wow, we get an extra Rumble? No, horrible. And especially when you got guys like Babatunde and Dan Matha. Dan Matha could come deliver my DoorDash. I wouldn't even think twice about it. I don't have a clue who Dan Matha is. And I don't know what they were doing bringing him to Saudi Arabia for this match. It makes no sense. There's really no surprises. I think Hornswoggle might be in it, and that's about it. The biggest thing, of course, in the Rumble that everyone remembers is the greatest Titus World Slide.
Titus World Slide.
But that's not enough to bring this any higher on my list. Daniel Bryan is one of my favorite wrestlers in the world, and he sets the record by lasting almost the whole way, which is cool, until he ends up getting eliminated by Big Cass. Like heel Big Cass. Just weird. And then Braun Strowman wins. And again, the stakes don't matter, right? It didn't Braun Strowman didn't get a win. He just won the Greatest Royal Rumble. That's all that really was. So, just no fun. Just a really bad match.
Well, to be completely honest with you, man, I've never even watched the whole Greatest Royal Rumble. I didn't watch it at the time, and I've never had the desire to go back and watch it for all of those reasons that you just mentioned. And so I kind of just leave it there on its own thing, and it probably deserves to be in the bottom 10, all the way down there at number 2. But I just don't even think about it or consider it. So I contemplated whether it should be included, but in all fairness, I've never technically watched the whole thing, so I don't feel right putting it in there. So I just stuck with the main actual Royal Rumbles on the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. But yeah, it's from everything I've read and from the clips I've seen, really the only highlight is seeing Titus O'Neil nearly break his neck. And if that's the biggest highlight of the match, it's not a good match.
No, and I'm with you. I remember being like, I remember setting up my day so I can get home early to watch Shawn Michaels return to the ring at the Saudi Arabian show when it was him and Triple H against the Brothers of Destruction. And then hearing and then I got held up at work, and I was like, I'm going to watch it when I get home. And everyone was like, don't even buy, it's terrible. And I didn't want to see it. I still have not gone back to watch it, nor do I have any interest. So yeah, those early Saudi Arabia shows, it started with Undertaker and Goldberg, or maybe this might have been before it, but there was so many back then that nothing lived up to the hype, unfortunately.
No. So yeah, totally get why you put that there.
Before we get to our number 1, was there any Rumbles that you thought when you first heard about this were going to be a part of your top 10, and you're surprised you didn't actually include in them?
Well, a lot of ones that you mentioned, I think definitely were in consideration for me that didn't quite make my list, like 2009 or the Greatest Royal Rumble. Honestly, the 2021, the COVID Rumble for me, again, I kind of just left it in the bubble, with the Greatest Royal Rumble. I kind of just don't even count the COVID stuff. I give it a little bit of a pass. But I remember I went back and watched it I didn't watch it when it first aired, but I watched it for our video 2 years ago where we did the best Royal Rumbles, because I had never seen it and I wanted to say, well, I need to see it just in case it makes the list. And it's not even bad. It's just got the whole COVID Thunderdome feel to it, where everything is just not quite right. And it's got the cool moment with Christian and Edge in there, but
wish that took place in front of a crowd. I feel like that could have been a great one. Yeah.
Absolutely, could have been. And then, like I mentioned, 89, but then 89 just has too many. It has a terrible winner, but it has so many cool moments in there, like you said. Yeah. You got Hogan eliminating Warlord in 2 seconds in that Royal Rumble. Just too much nostalgia in there for me, even though I think the winner is so out of left field. So those are ones I definitely had in consideration. What about you?
For me, I didn't remember liking the 93 Rumble so much, but I did go back and watched it. I love it. I love Perfect eliminating Ric Flair. I love the Giant Gonzalez coming out there. Like, this is all stuff that, like, if it happened now or a couple years ago, we'd probably be crapping all over it. But, like, it brings you back to being a kid, so it's hard to get rid of those. And Yokozuna was such a random winner out of nowhere, and setting up that match there with Yokozuna and Bret Hart at WrestleMania, I thought was actually kind of cool. So I thought it was going to be on my list, but wasn't there. And I was surprised that I really had such fond memories of the older ones and didn't put any of them on here.
Yeah, 93 is cool because it's one of the first times they used the Rumble to, like, strap a rocket to a guy. Like you said, Yokozuna had just debuted a couple months before, and they used this to just boost him into the WrestleMania main event. This unknown guy, he hadn't even been in WCW or anything like that. So that was pretty exciting and pretty thrilling to see at the moment, even though Randy Savage tries to pin him at the end. Weird.
Well, I think for me also, it's I'm surprised I don't have any, not to give a spoiler, but I'm pretty sure we have the same number one.
Seems like it.
But I don't have any women's Royal Rumbles on mine. And you think back,
you did.
And I don't know that too many of them were even that great. But I just none of them made it. I guess they kind of were on the outside looking in for a couple of them. The 2021. It sounds like one I should have put on there, but I'm with you with the COVID shows too. I kind of just let those be. Didn't even bother with those. It's a shame we didn't get like the first Carlito entrance back in front of a live crowd. Same for that Edge and Christian moment. That would have been really cool. But
Yeah, I hate to say this. I just, for me, I don't think there's been a great women's Royal Rumble yet. Not all of them are bad. But there hasn't been one that, like, blown me away yet, and I think part of the symptom of having two Rumbles on the same night. Like, it's hard to really love both of them. So yeah, I think once we get some separation, even having them, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, I think will help separate them a little bit more and give them a little more room to breathe and help us get to a point where I feel like we have a great women's Royal Rumble.
I mean, I was at the first two, and so that 2018 one I love, the first one, because the ending is just so great, where it comes out to number 30, and there were a little bit of rumblings that maybe Ronda Rousey was coming to WWE, and then it's Trish, who's great. No one's going to boo Trish. Makes sense for her to be a part of it. Asuka keeps her undefeated streak alive, wins, and you have the great moment with her in between Alexa Bliss and Charlotte pointing to the sign. Then bang, Ronda's music hits, and it's just such an incredible live moment to be there for. And then the next year, 2019, I love the Becky Lynch twist of her getting thrown into that after losing to Asuka to start the night. But I agree, it's not been. Those are some great moments. I don't think those are great full-length matches.
Yeah, like I said, we've said this on here already. Too many surprises, too many legends coming back. It's a symptom of these women's Royal Rumbles. A little too much of that. But yeah, I think we probably have the same one here at number one, and I think it's a consensus number one from most fans. That'd be the 2015 Royal Rumble.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just awful. Not good at all.
Were you there, or did you watch it on pay-per-view? I mean, what was your reaction watching live?
I remember we had gone to a kid's birthday that day that was WWE theme in our family,
Whoa.
our cousin. So the hype was real. We're ready to go. And I'm like, this is great. It's going to be a great show because you knew you were going to have Cena, Brock, and Rollins in the title match, which you knew was going to deliver. And then you figured, all right, they've announced Daniel Bryan is back. He's in the Rumble. They aren't going to do it 2 years in a row and screw us. This is to get together to watch Daniel Bryan have his crowning achievement. Why would they bring him back and put him in the Rumble if you're not going to put the guy over? And so, it was the whole day. We got to go home. We got to see Daniel Bryan finally get his moment. He's back. We're going to go 2 for 2 at Mania. And instead, this is like, in my opinion, peak WWE just being like, no, we gave it to you. It's done. And now we're going to do what we need to do with our new guy, whether you like it or not. And to me, I still don't understand if the point wasn't getting hot just thinking about it. If the point was to bring Daniel Bryan back, put him in the Rumble, just have him show up the next night on Raw. I don't think it added. It was already network era. It didn't add any additional buys by having Daniel Bryan in the Rumble. So you just made him look like such a nobody in this match. I mean, it just is terrible.
Yep, it's one of the biggest FUs to the fans, the whole booking of this Royal Rumble. And it starts off kind of fun. You got Bubba Ray Dudley, who I'm not a huge fan of, but it was a cool return for him in this Rumble. You got DDP coming back. I'm always here for a DDP comeback in the Rumble. So some good stuff starting off. But once Daniel Bryan gets tossed and you just hear just the wind get sucked out of this crowd immediately. And what a difference a year makes for Roman Reigns, right? You talked about 2014. He had it. He was the crowd was pulling for him and behind him. And this year, like, they were not having it, couldn't stand it. And I think the thing that doesn't get mentioned as much as the Roman stuff is you got Big Show and Kane in 2015. I mean, at least 5 years past their expiration dates, probably 10 years past their expiration dates, as the dominant forces in this Rumble, like decimating people, just picking up dead bodies and tossing them out of the ring. I mean, I couldn't think of a worse pair of people to be doing that in 2015. I mean, absolute just go away heat for that.
Completely. And you think about it, they try to even do the Hail Mary of having The Rock come out and help Roman, and he gets booed. Yes. They wanted the evil Russian Rusev to win the Rumble and get rid of Roman and lay out The Rock to end the show. The crowd, Philly would have went nuts. They would have went crazy for it.
Rusev Day.
Just awful. And I remember the crazy part about this is, and I will say as a sidebar, this idea that Matt Cardona is going to have his new music play at the Royal Rumble. Bully Ray was one of the bigger acts in all of TNA before Bubba Ray returns to WWE. But WWE is like, nope, bro, you're one half of the Dudleys, and that's who you are here. You're not Bully Ray nothing. So if Matt Cardona comes back, get ready to sing "Oh Radio" and do "woo woo woo" in the crowd. I'll be ready for it, and I'll be excited for it.
Exactly.
I do not think he's going to come out as GCW Matt Cardona.
Great point.
But I will say the fun part about this is that after the show, everybody's mad. I think even Mick Foley was like going to break his television if Daniel Bryan didn't win, and he actually did. And I remember sitting there and being so mad, and all of us going, we've got to go to Raw tomorrow because we've got to boo Roman Reigns. We got to just hijack the show. That was like the hijack the show era. And everybody hashtag cancel WWE Network is trending on Twitter.
Everywhere. Yep.
Everyone was so mad. This was like the internet wrestling community's like revolt against WWE. And the very next morning they release, thank you for 1 million subscribers on the WWE Network. The ultimate troll job. It's almost like they knew they had that already, and they went, no, we're going to put Roman over, piss everyone off, and then release it the next morning. And I always wonder, like, what would have happened if Raw took place? Because it doesn't take place. Raw gets canceled, it gets snowed out, and they have a really great Raw from the WWE headquarters. One of my favorite Raws. And because of that, I think a lot of the anger and hostility against Roman from those fans that easily were going to make the trip from the Rumble to Hartford, Connecticut for Raw, and don't ever get a chance to do it. And I don't think that Roman ever got as much hate as he would have got certainly the next night after the Royal Rumble.
Oh, they absolutely got saved by that. Yeah, I mean, and actually they have a nice segment with like a sit-down interview with Roman and Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. I mean, it's actually a really it's a huge improvement over what we saw at the Rumble, and way better than anything they would have been done in front of a crowd. So yeah, that absolutely saved the whole run to WrestleMania, in my opinion. Would have been completely different. Maybe might have even changed how they booked WrestleMania up at that point if they hadn't had to cancel that Raw. But I remember I had just moved from Augusta to Atlanta, Georgia, about 6 months before this. And I drove back to Augusta. It's about 2.5 hour drive to watch the Rumble with the crew there in Augusta. And the plan was to drive there, watch the Rumble, drive back that night. 10 years ago, I could do that drive through the night sort of thing. I can't really do that anymore. But
it's a 10-hour drive from
Augusta? 2.5 hour drive.
Oh, 2.5 hours. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Just get a cup of coffee, you're good to go. Nothing like your drive after SummerSlam last year. But oh my gosh, I was so excited, so good to see everybody and be back and have our wrestling crew back together after a few months. And that drive home was just so disappointing, so dejected, so frustrated, so angry, just going through scenarios in my head like, how could they do this? What were they thinking? Such a long ride home after that Royal Rumble because it was such a supreme letdown.
Yeah. And I think it makes matters. Like when the year before when they do it with Batista, he was at least a pro, so he knew to kind of be like, hey, deal with it, kind of turn heel almost that night. Roman is like getting booed out of the building, both arms raised, smiling from ear to ear because he's new and he doesn't know how to kind of deal with that. But it made it even worse. Like it was just dreadful. And that was the night we looked at each other and said, we're going to WrestleMania. And that's the best part of us in the IWC. It's like they can give us the crappiest stuff. We're still going to go to WrestleMania. We're still going to buy the stuff. And at the end of the day, sometimes we're not what they want to appease.
We're the biggest marks of all, truly.
Absolutely. And I do remember that sit down that you mentioned there with Roman and Brock. I remember my wife looking at me and being like, this is going to be a really good match at WrestleMania. And she was right. I definitely went to that WrestleMania like, this is going to suck. These guys are not ready. And granted, they did throw the audible in there with Rollins, but I didn't think they needed to. I thought they had a great main event.
I agree.
Main event at that stage. I think until you went for SummerSlam, I think it was their best main event.
Yeah, I agree completely. So, yeah, it's I don't think you can really make an argument for any other Rumble being the worst of all time. Just such a disastrous ending. And I feel like there's been a little bit of on the internet the past couple of years trying to retroactively say, oh, it wasn't that bad, or, oh, people are misremembering this. No, we're not. It was a disaster.
Because, it wasn't only Daniel Bryan. To your point, it was like everybody you kind of liked. Was like, oh, here comes Dolph Ziggler. All right, here comes Dean Ambrose. Okay, I can get behind him. Boom. They were just taken out in a few minutes, unceremoniously dumped. They didn't want anyone to be cheered, except for Roman Reigns, unless it was The Rock helping Roman Reigns. So they didn't want any chance of like anyone getting your hope up for any of your favorites. The only one who was going to come save the day was Roman Reigns.
Speaking of calling audibles, you think they could have saved it if Rock heard that reaction and just whispered in Roman's ear, sorry, pal, and gave him the rock bottom right then and there?
Tossed him out of the ring and said, Brock Lesnar, I'll see you at WrestleMania. Let's go.
Come on.
That would have been perfect. Like, they're standing there cheering, and you hear the buzzer go off, and Roman's like, wait, someone's coming out. And he turns around, bang, rock bottom, people's elbow, throw him out. They give up on Roman right from the start, and imagine how history would be different.
Would have saved it, I feel like.
That would have been fantastic, but it was not to be, and that is why it ranks number one on both of our list. And even the greatest Royal Rumble, as terrible as that was, it could not break the horribleness, because the greatest Royal Rumble was like, whatever. There's no hope in that. It wasn't like I was pumped for it.
That's
this
my
was
thing.
Like, You thought it was their night to make it right from the year before, and instead Bryan gets eliminated. When he gets eliminated, that crowd is like, "What? Are you kidding me? He's gone already?" And they never get back on track after that moment.
No, they don't. And it's crazy that the Rumble is going back to Saudi Arabia next year, the real Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
And thankfully we're getting one in before that happens. And we got to squeeze our pay-per-views in here in the States while we can, because it's going so international lately. What do you what do you not want to see happen in this year's Royal Rumble that will, make sure that this one does not become one of the worst ones in your book?
John Cena comes out to start off the Royal Rumble, and as he's on his way to the ring, he turns around, he gives the old Stu, let's go to work. Bang, he's laid out by Logan Paul. Logan Paul destroys him, throws him in the ring. Ding, 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 we begin. Logan tosses John Cena before number 3 even gets in there. And that is our Mania match. Logan Paul versus John Cena. That is good. And I do part of
you just scared the crap out of me. I feel like that's destined to happen now.
Off the top of my head in 2 seconds, a horrific start to the Royal Rumble.
Oh.
What do you what is something you absolutely do not want to see?
Well, I know this might go against the grain, but you know what? I just want to break from records being set at the Royal Rumble. And that seems crazy for us being there. Usually you want something iconic to happen, but I'm kind of sick of seeing people last from number 1. I'm kind of sick of people lasting an hour, 70 minutes, 80 minutes. It happened in both Rumbles last year. Somebody went the distance in both Rumbles last year. So I'd be fine if nobody lasted more than 20 or 30 minutes this year. Let's take a little break from that.
Yeah, I agree. One of them that was close to my list was actually 2017, because I felt that 2017 brought all the big guns in at the end. And it just was now, this guy, Goldberg eliminates Brock, Taker eliminates Goldberg, and it felt like too much at the end. Mm-hmm. But I do hear your point about you don't need the guy to run the distance, because then it becomes you expect someone's going to run the distance.
It doesn't mean as much when it happens every year.
Right. Exactly.
Or if it's going to happen, give me let Chad Gable last 62 minutes. Back in the day when Rick Martel or Greg Valentine would last, would go the distance, or Bob Backlund in 1993 lasting 50 something minutes. Let Chad Gable or let Meechin in the Women's Royal Rumble last for 60 minutes for no particular reason. Give me something like that. I don't need Cody Rhodes or not Cody Rhodes. I don't need CM Punk or Seth Rollins to go an hour, man. I don't need it to happen this year.
Yeah, because I don't think it does anything for them. I think you're right. It's got to be, if it's going to happen, it's got to be someone that the next night on Raw you're going, what a great performance. Gunther, that was his star-making performance was that Royal Rumble in 2023. So yeah, I completely agree. And what are some things I guess you do want to see happen at the 2025 Royal Rumble? I want 2 to 3 good surprises in each Agreed.
Rumble. Maybe it's a TNA superstar, or maybe it's a Ruthless Aggression era comeback, or maybe somebody like a Rusev, coming in, something like that. He'd get a huge reaction coming in at the Rumble. But I don't want 10 in each Royal Rumble. Give me 2 or 3. Give me a little bit of something. A legend, one NXT debut, and one return.
I like that.
Joe Hendry. I feel like Joe Hendry's a lock for the Royal Rumble, and it's going to be a huge reaction. So something like that. That's all I want. I just want. I want it to be fun throughout. Have little chunks with little stories in there that go throughout the whole thing. Don't give me a chunk where there's 12 people in the ring all at the same time. You got to have somebody in there clearing out the Duke Drosies and the Mantars. You can't have them clogging up there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. Last year, I thought they did a great job with the 1 year they did a good job with the Women's Royal Rumble. You started off with Naomi. You had Jade Cargill come in toward the end, and then you ended with the returning Liv Morgan. And everyone wanted the, AJ Lee. But that was perfect. You had 3 great returns. Each one of them meant something. I'm with you. I think that if you have 3 or 4 good returns, that's really, you can't ask for too much more than that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's all of, I'd love to see Trick Williams. Finally, this is the time.
That seems like a lock too.
That would be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, that seems like it's a lock.
Yeah, that would be a cool one. But Rusev, man, especially if they bring in the guy who did the me. Does the whole Rusev deck, it would be absolutely amazing. What a fun moment that would be.
It would.
So yeah, I try to temper my expectations. Because you had that couple of year period, every single year was Kenny Omega or Kazuchika Okada. Every year, people thought those guys were coming in, and that was just never going to happen. But a fun return or two would be great.
Oh yeah, feels like Pat McAfee is a lock to be in there in Indy.
Yeah. For sure, 100%.
That's going to happen. Corey Graves, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like they wanted to sell it that it was real. And then he said, make sure you tune into the CW network tomorrow to see what I got to say. And it was like, well, work. And so because of that, they were like, all right, we got to pull him out. I do still think there's a chance it could be something real.
Who knows?
He actually competed in that NXT tournament at Royal Rumble 2013
okay.
to get in. So it'd be kind of a 12 years later for him. It'd be cool to see him get a chance. I mean, the big one for me would be, you've got Kofi and Xavier clearing house, and out comes Big E. If he could get cleared, I think would be so much fun.
Yeah, that would be a unexpected, exciting moment. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think they blew it a bit with the women by having. I don't think anyone's super pumped for it, but if we had an opportunity to get Nikki Bella to return at the Rumble, at least then we'd be able to get Brie Bella coming out to return as well. Would be a lot of fun. At least and I also think, and I know you don't like these guys, but it's a shame they showed up in AEW because, man, the moment.
Oh my God!
If the Boom guys made a surprise entrant in the Rumble, I'd be uncontrollable. It would be ridiculous if that were to take place. But I think they're very much ingrained with AEW.
I might throw my soda and my hot dog into the ring if that happens. But give me a women's surprise return that we haven't seen over the past 7 or 8 years. Give me somebody new. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but give me somebody that has not made that comeback appearance yet.
I agree. I think that would be fun. I like your idea of doing. Honestly, the best things for the women in these last couple of years have been your TNA folks. The year Mickie James came back, did the hardcore country music last year.
That was awesome.
Jordan Grace, when her siren started going off, and I started going to Scotty Steiner in the Women's Royal Rumble. But those are fun ones because that I think using that TNA relationship, possibilities are endless as to who could show up there.
Yep, and I think we will definitely see a few of those in one or both of these Rumbles.
Absolutely, and the good news is, even if it's terrible, we'll still have a great trip and we'll have great memories. And SummerSlam 2023 didn't have a ton of bangers, but we all enjoyed the trip and had so many great memories from it. So
exactly,
it's going to be a great time. But Alex, why don't you go ahead and plug? I know you guys had a really fun episode of Talking Taker that you did here to kick off the new year. Why don't you tell everybody what you have going on?
Well, the Talking Taker podcast is available on all your podcasting platforms and on YouTube as well. And as Tommy alluded to, we did something that people have been asking us to do since the beginning. Almost 8 years ago, we covered The Undertaker in Suburban Commando, the 1991 cinematic classic. We finally analyzed it and rewatched it and talked about The Undertaker's debut role in that, and it is such an insane movie. It's more insane than you even remember it being. So if you haven't seen it in a while, go watch it, or if you just got fond memories of it, listen to our recap of it. And Travis and I, we will have we always do a Royal Rumble watch along at Royal Rumble time. We usually do it for the January episode, but since the Rumble's technically in February this year, we'll drop it on February 1st. So or I guess January 31st is Friday. The Rumble's on February 1st, I think, but one or the other. I don't know. But yeah, we're gonna actually do the 95 Rumble watch along, one of the worst ones of all time, which is sometimes one of the most fun ones to do the watch along for. We're gonna watch Taker's match with IRS again.
Oh wow!
Not a 5-star
That isn't the year he
classic.
goes against Brett. I guess that match is 96.
That's 96.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So you're gonna watch Taker and IRS. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Are you also
30
gonna do the Rumble too?
Yeah, we'll do the Rumble too since it is so short. 30 years anniversary of the 95 Rumble. Is it as bad as we remember it? Yeah, we think it is. But but check it out.
We set it up perfectly there.
We did.
Us working collaboratively, and we didn't even know it. So at least I didn't know it. So it works out really well, and excited to check that out. Alex and Travis do a great job. Thoroughly enjoyed some bonus episodes you put up last month too. Alex did a great job connecting with Steven Zeman of the Collecting Dead Man podcast, as well as a friend of this here channel, as well as Alex's, Randy Turco, going through all the Undertaker's merchandise of 2024. I thought that was such a really fun one there. So make sure you go check that out. I really got a lot out of that one. That was a good one.
And a bonus episode with you last month as well, talking about Saturday night's main event. So, yeah, you can hear Tommy on many, many episodes of Talking Taker back in the archives, or watch them on YouTube. And, not as many travel vlogs, but I will definitely do a travel vlog for the Rumble as well. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Tommy, I'm sure you'll do your daily vlogs from the trip, and I'll do one, just big one at the end of the trip. So you get a different perspective and see some different stuff in our vlogs. So if you're a fan of this channel, go subscribe to the Talking Taker YouTube channel, and you'll get the full picture of the Royal Rumble experience.
Yeah, last year you did a premiere on YouTube, and we all watched it as it went on YouTube together. That was really cool. So excited to check that out, and certainly thank you so much for joining us again, the trilogy, and we'll have to have you back on here soon, and hopefully some more fun stuff here as we get to the Rumble here on the channel as well. So making sure you keep it locked in. Let us know, did we get the list right? Who do you agree with? Who do you think got more of the bottom 10, so to speak, of the Royal Rumbles? And let us know what you thought were the worst Rumbles of all time. And we'll be back real soon right here on Watch Along Wrestling. Make sure you check out Talking Taker and enjoy the Royal Rumble. Take care, everybody.